Former United States Air Force Captain Dale Brown's career as a novelist began with 1987's The Flight of the Old Dog. The novel, written while he was still on active duty, drew upon his 2,500 plus hours as a navigator in B-52s to tell the story of a daring bombing mission into Russia during the height of the Cold War. The success of the novel sparked a career that includes 21 novels, over a dozen of which have reached the New York Times bestseller list, as well as the 18-book Dreamland series, created with Jim DeFelice. From the Cold War to the global war on terror, to the exploration and weaponization of space, Brown's techno-thrillers have electrified audiences while seeming to predict real-world events and advancements. Chances are, whatever you read in a Dale Brown novel today will be happening in the near future. Now, Brown takes us to Eagle Station, where Russia and China have once again brought the U.S. to the brink of war, this time on an unexpected new battlefront, the far side of the moon. It's an appropriate setting for the next chapter in what has been a stellar career.
Hey, hi guys, this is Dale Brown talking from beautiful Lake Tahoe. You guys have to see this podcast. I had a great time doing it, and I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
So, Dale Brown, your latest thriller, Eagle Station, it takes place shortly after your smash hit last year, the Kremlin strike. Can you give the audience a teaser of how the world looks after the U.S.-Russian conflict, where the U.S. captured that Russian space station, the weapons platform, and we saw the Kremlin along with the Russian president get obliterated?
It's the next step beyond that now. It's the nations like the United States, China, and Russia realize that fusion reactors are the future of power generation, especially in space. And with the Russians having such a big jump at it, that they realize that one source of the materials they need is on the far side of the moon, which gets bombarded all the time by solar energy. So now the push is on to start colonizing the moon. And Russia and China decide they need to get together to try to prevent the United States from moving ahead with their plans.
Great. Right. And in that vein, you've come across the helium-3 element that's a critical portion of that technology, and that more of it is available on the moon than Earth. And so the U.S. sees that as the opportunity to mine that particular element.
Exactly.
Where did helium-3 come from? Do you know something that us mere mortals in the society have no clue about?
It's just a bunch of research. I mean, I'm the world's biggest research nerd, so I read about that. I know we mine helium-3. We several nations do, but it's very, very small amounts. But on the moon, because they don't have a protective atmosphere, they get bombarded all the time with solar energy. So
right.
Helium-3 exists in very large quantities on the moon. The problem, of course, is mining it and then getting it back to Earth. And that's the process that the United States wants to start, and the process that Russia with China wants to stop them from doing.
Right, and there's a little less radioactivity as far as I could tell. So there's also some of that safety feature built into that.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Dale, I think you mentioned the exact number. I mean, because you research the heck out of books before you write them. I think you reference the number of kilograms that the United States is able to mine, or the entire world is able to mine, and I think it's maybe 50 or something minute.
Some really minute amount, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why fusion energy and fusion reactors really haven't progressed very much, because the raw materials, the stuff we need to run those reactors, just really doesn't exist on Earth.
Right.
So I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 50 grams a year or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost so small.
How expensive is that to do?
Yes. Yeah, very expensive to mine also.
Wow.
Going back to what you said, you'd read something about it. Is this something that we're actively pursuing as a nation, or that other nations are pursuing, or is that all from your imagination, that part?
Yeah, I think most of it is from my imagination. Stuff with the moon, I'm not sure if the United States especially is ready to return to the moon yet. I know there's been a little bit of discussions about it, but I'm not really sure if that's really progressing. I know we were talking about going to Mars. Well, I really don't see that happening. But I think we want to return back to space, and I think that's our real priority now for the next 5 to 10 years is having an American presence in space right now, being able to have to take our own scientists and our own astronauts up to the International Space Station using American equipment and American rocket engines instead of relying on the Russians to do it.
Right.
Starting next week.
Already going to be for the next 10 years at least. Now, going back to the moon, I think a lot of researchers, we're going to have a lot of remote, robots going back to the moon. A lot of robots going to Mars, but I think humans going there, at least Americans, will probably take another 15, 20 years to do that.
Okay.
Although Eagle Station and all of your works are works of fiction, we find a whole lot of truth in them because of all the heavy research you do. Have you ever gotten so close to the truth that you received the phone call or a request and they said, hey, don't include this in your book?
No, that hasn't happened, but I've had a lot of close calls. And I had one incident where, I forget the name of the book, but the last flying scene in the book has a small airplane taking off from a Maryland airport and crashing itself into the White House. 3 months after that happened, the incident really happened.
Oh, jeez.
So a day or two after that incident happened, I got a visit from the Secret Service.
Chris,
Chris.
So yeah, Dale, I used to be a special agent with the Secret Service. So
really,
yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah, 2 guys showed up at the front door, and that at first actually it was 2 visits. First one, they wanted to know if I knew the pilot of the airplane that crashed in the White House, and I said no, and that was pretty much it. They came back later on, or actually the next day, and they wanted to know how I knew all this information about the exact geographic coordinates of the White House and the elevation of the White House and how long it takes to fly from this airport to hit the White House. They wanted to know how I knew that. And I just tried to explain to them it's all research. That's what I do. They wanted some evidence of that. They wanted to see, some of the research books and parts that I used to build all those scenes. And this was after the paperback came out, so a lot of that stuff was kind of in storage. So I had to dig it out from underneath the house. But
there was some
about an hour
motivation
and a half or so, they were satisfied that I was telling the truth.
So they waited for you to dig it out right then?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
They stayed upstairs. They didn't come down to the basement with me, but
Secret Service
they
agents.
waited. They wanted to see some proof. The sectional chart's really what I used, and I actually plotted it on the chart. And I used to be a B-52 navigator, so that's what I did was plot charts. And so after I showed them all that stuff, they were pretty happy about it. They asked me about the writing business and about how long I've been doing it, and all that stuff. But overall, it was really good. A really good meeting. The first day was kind of on edge. They wanted to know some real details about stuff. The second one, once they figured out that I was for real, they were very kicked back and relaxed, and they were great.
You know what's crazy though is I know a lot of the guys on the details and stuff, and we travel a lot, so we're in the airports all the time, and your books are always grabbing your books and reading them on AF1, AF2, and so I guess they sent the 1 or 2 guys who didn't know who the heck you were. The new guys. But Dale, you incorporate some serious high tech gear and equipment in the Eagle Station, from orbiting space stations that we were talking about with the armed plasma railguns, the autonomous attack drones, and the incredible fast and stealthy S-29B space plane. Oh, yeah. I can imagine the amount of research you conducted before writing this book but what does that research look like? You know, are you reading from journals and other reliable sources, or do you find it's more helpful to talk to people in the know?
It used to be my favorite way to do it was to actually visit a military base or visit a defense contractor and actually sit down with the guys and if I wanted to know about the B-1 bomber, actually go to a military base. And doing that, I was I got rides on the B-1. I was the first civilian to fly in the B-2 bomber. It was just once around the pattern, you got to do it. So
Dude, that is awesome.
But after 9/11, all trips pretty much dried out. That the military units I wanted to visit were either coming back from deployment or getting ready to go on deployment, or they were actually deployed. So it's very tough to do it. The security is incredible right now. Very tough to get on there. I still correspond with public affairs officers. They put me in touch with some of the crews, but mostly it's done by email these days. So that kind of hands-on research has gone away. It's been pretty much replaced by just going on the internet and picking up stuff. The Defense Advanced Research Project Agency is one of my favorite websites to go to. That's where I really get the ideas for the stuff that's coming down the pike in the next 5, 10, 15 years, because that's what DARPA does.
Right.
Is they have a bunch of guys really getting together and putting out a wild idea and then presenting that on the websites and to their different contractors, and they're asking for proposals later on. So that's really the website is where they get where they put their ideas down and they invite people to respond to it. And when I read those things, the gears just start turning. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did that with my last book. Same thing. I was looking at all the medical stuff that they were offering, and I thought, okay, now what's 10 steps beyond what's actually written down there? Because you know their stuff, and then you just hope you don't land behind it again. For us.
But it's what I try to do is I don't want to really write about what's happening right now. I think there's enough authors out there to do that.
Yeah.
I want to press the state of the art 3 to 5 years, which used to be several, used to be a generation every 3 to 5 years. Now it's several generations over 5 years.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
But I want to write about what's coming down the pike, and all of my works have always seemed like science fiction when you first pick it up and read them. The single stage to orbit space planes, things like that.
Yeah.
Well, Dale, I love cracking open your book, and you see the year, like, so at Eagle Station it's 2022, and you're like, all right, this is cool. And I'm going, it's right over the right, it's right there, and get right into it.
Well, but I've been writing about GPS and laser guided bombs and things like that for years and years, years before Desert Storm, and that's where really everybody got a really good look at GPS and laser guided munitions, things like that. But I've been writing about it, and people have been saying, it's science fiction, that doesn't exist, or it might exist, but that's going to be 10 years from now, and just maybe 3 or 4 years later, everybody was watching it on TV, and that's where I really want to press it now. But probably Eagle Station, the book I'm writing right now is probably getting more and more into the realm of science fiction. So I'm getting a little bit of pushback from publishers saying we don't want you to get into the science fiction business. We want you to stick with the high tech stuff. We want to keep your readers. We want to keep the people who are loyal to you, but don't want to read science fiction. So they're kind of telling me, a little bit subtly to kind of tone it down a little bit, bring it more back into the present day. So I'll probably end up doing that a little bit, but I always want to press the level of technology to make sure that I'm staying ahead of the current technology.
Yeah, and as it turns out, watch, you'll be behind like one extra step just because they're making you do that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I'm sure I am behind. I'm
Yeah.
positive about that. I think that the stuff I'm writing about that everybody says is science fiction probably exists someplace.
Probably already does.
Yeah.
Groom Lake,
Groom Lake,
really
yeah.
out there getting ready to fly, or maybe is flying.
Yeah.
Happened with the stealth fighter, the stealth bomber. It was flying for years and years, before it was actually unveiled. So
A long time.
technology is, back 20 years ago, that was science fiction stuff, and before we knew it, the actual plane was flying, and not only that, but fighting in a war. So,
Yeah.
that's what's happening with the state of technology. The other, generations are advancing faster than we could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Every 18 months.
Well, Moore's law, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, I think every 18 months it's really more like 9 months and 12 months now.
I think you're right.
Look at computers, look at iPhones, things like that. Look at the, cellular networks. Now we're talking about 6G now, and
Jeez.
really isn't rolled out fully, but they're already talking about 6G. So the state of the art is advancing really, really rapidly, and I don't think we really know exactly what the state of the art is anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. I want to go back all the way to the beginning. So, Flight of the Old Dog was your first novel, published in 1987, I believe.
Right.
This was, and it was published shortly after you had retired from the Air Force as a captain. Even though you kind of wrote it, from what I could tell, while you were still active duty. Is that true?
Right. Yeah. I started writing it when I was flying B-52s. Cross-trained over to the FB-111 bomber, but I was writing the novel instead of doing the stuff I was supposed to be doing, like staff college and my master's degree and things like that. So I spent 3 years writing the novel. I was still in the Air Force. I actually presented it to an agent. Actually, I was sending it out to several publishers and agents before really realizing the way you're actually supposed to do it. But I actually got the interest of an agent. And at the time, I was stationed up at Pease Air Force Base in New Hampshire, and the agent was in New York City and asked me to come down for a meeting. And
did you have to do the vetting process back then, like the DoD or the Air Force, like they kind of have to do now with some of the guys coming out of, like, say, Special Forces and whatnot?
Yeah, I did that actually. I presented it to the Public Affairs Office, who presented it to the wing commander, who refused to authorize me to publish it.
No.
So so it was kind of so I didn't publish it, but I did pass out outlines and sample chapters to agents.
Yeah.
Finally got the attention of George and Olga Weiser in New York City. When I went down to visit them, and I thought, there was going to be a big signing ceremony and lunch, tavern on the green, and go to and have a big celebration. And I go into the Weezer's office, which is probably the size of my office here. 2 desks pushed together. The partner's desk in the middle of the room, and the room was filled with manuscripts and books just piled up to the ceiling. And the manuscript, at the time, the manuscript was like 750 pages. It was huge. And Weezers were the first ones to actually ask for the complete manuscript.
Oh.
I had sent out sample chapters and queries and outlines and things. They asked for the whole manuscript, and they had it for maybe about a month or so when they invited me down to New York. And instead of all the parties and the celebrations and the media and all this stuff, the manuscript was sitting on their desk. It was tied in a string with probably 100 Post-it notes stuck in the pages. And George picks up the manuscripts and drops it in front of me. He goes, "Fix it." And that was my first meeting. Lasted about 15 minutes. I went back to the hotel. I was manuscript, and I was unbelievably dejected. Didn't touch the manuscript for probably 2 weeks, and then finally I unwrapped it and started reading the Post-it notes. each and every one of the Post-it notes made sense. And the gist of all the Post-it notes was the technology stuff. Obviously, you like the technology stuff, and obviously you're really into that stuff, but you don't really need to have it in each and every scene. That you use the technology to advance the story, but don't stop the story to explain circuit breakers and the switch that you use to release a weapon from a B-52 bomber. That stuff is good. It's obvious you like it, but don't let that interfere with the story. The story master, and you can use all that other stuff to enhance the story. Don't interrupt the story with it. So I figured it out, did all the fixes they recommended, sent it back, didn't hear from again for 3 or 4 or 5 months after that. In the meantime, I got out of the Air Force, I moved from Massachusetts back to California, and then I moved around several times in California. I thought, well, that manuscript's gone. Might as well work on another one. They stole it. They changed the author's name, and they're going to market it, and it'll be a big success and all that. Out of the clear blue, probably the last time I moved, I was cleaning carpets, and I was a security guard trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my life after this. And I get a telegram, the one and only telegram, with the Western Union guy actually comes to the front door.
Wow.
The doorbell, and gives me a telegram. And it was, still remember what it said. It's like, exciting news about your manuscript from George Weezer. Exciting news about your manuscript. Call me immediately. 212-260-0860. Still remember the phone number.
Wow.
So I did, and he said he had a deal. He had a 3-book deal for Flight of the Old Dog plus 2 other manuscripts.
Wow, that's awesome.
I thought, wow, that's great. But then I told him, later on in the conversations, that I was all set. I was going to go to the Bay Area, start flight training to be a flight instructor. And George says, "Oh no, you're a professional author right now. You've got to start working on book number 2 and book number 3. And in the meantime, I'm going to start, getting you these 3-book deals." So after that, Flight of the Old Dog was the first one, 1987. And it's been basically 1 book a year since then.
Holy smokes.
But out of the clear blue sky, a telegram.
So cool, though.
Folks probably don't know what a telegram is, but it's
Yeah.
it was
People,
before
there weren't
faxes
cell
and before
phones yet,
emails
so.
and before text. It was a thing transmitted by cable, but printed out on a piece of paper and delivered to you by hand. So it was just incredible. And it's been, except for 2 major things in my life, it's been 1 book a year since Flight of the Old Dog.
Wow.
And it's been great. I live in Lake Tahoe, raising my son up here, still fly for the Civil Air Patrol. I fly for Angel Flight West, doing charity medical transportation. And it's just great. It's been terrific.
Beautiful.
You did something that few authors have the courage to do. You killed off a signature character who was the centerpiece of a long-running and popular series.
Yeah.
First question, what led you to that decision? And secondly, were you a little anxious or maybe outright terrified to follow through with that decision?
Yep, that was probably one of the most important decisions I made. Patrick was just getting, he was a 3-star general. He was in and out of the Air Force. He had other things going. He got hired by Sky Masters to do work for him, but he wanted to get back in the cockpit, and that's just not the place for a 3-star general. And I, just trying to decide what I was going to do with Patrick. And one of the decisions you have to make with any character is how long you're going to keep them around. It's natural for people to have a career and to lose their career and lose their life. And that was the time to decide with Patrick. So I did it. And the blowback I got was incredible.
I can only imagine.
90% negative. 90% negative. And and this was, now emails are big. So I just got a ton of emails. And what I was doing, of course, with all the, since email, what was putting the email address in the book.
Oh.
Made it really easy for people to contact me, and they did. And
So you fired it off.
yeah. So you did what, Patrick? So I had to make a decision again after that what I was going to do with Patrick. So first decision was to advance Bradley. I already had plans to start merging him into the books, but with Tiger's Claw, I think that's really where Bradley steps out and started make him a major character. But whether or not I wanted to do that without his father was another question. So I had to figure out some way to bring Patrick back, and I'm not sure if it was the best way or the best decision to do it, but I did it, and it seemed to work out. I think I didn't lose any readers, or very many of them at least, and that tactic seemed to work. Now I think with Bradley moving up and definitely moving into a main character in the books, that I've got to really decide what Patrick is going to do, if anything, in the stories. Mm-hmm. So I'm waiting for feedback. I think Eagle Station is going to be a big a watermark where a lot of readers will say, okay, we want Patrick to do this and that. We want Bradley to do this and that. So I'm going to let the readers decide really what they want to do. And then, I've got an idea for the book I'm working on now. I've got an idea about what Patrick's going to do and where he's going to go. But really the readers are going to steer this one for me.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about craft. It seems a number of thriller authors they're moving towards writing shorter chapters, 2 to 5 pages max. Anything longer, and you end up really losing the audience, or the attention of the audience. Is this something that you've embraced? I mean, or and is it? Do you find it easier to work with those shorter chapters?
No, not at all. My chapters are all. I plan for chapters that are 50 pages long, and the feedback I've gotten about doing that is that that's about how long readers really want to sit down and read it. The audio books also that 50 pages seems to be a good place where people listening to the books or reading them on a Kindle can stop and say, okay, I got to stop right now. So this is a good place to stop. Pages seems to work out pretty well. I think the story really dictates that, but it's the shorter chapters. I've never really understood that. There's some authors that I really like that write 2-paragraph chapters, and I don't get that at all. But if that's a trend, that's fine. But I'm not going to do that. 50 pages I think works out really well. My readers seem to like it. The publisher seems to like it. So if he's happy, I'm happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the length has to do with the author's style. I mean, I think I've read some authors who have really long chapters, and I love it that way. And then I've read some that have some short chapters, and because the way they do it, it works for them as well. So it's one of those things where I don't know that there's a wrong answer overall. There's just a right answer for each writer.
Right. Yeah. I think with my writing style, since I write kind of an international geopolitical thing, where the scene is changing so much, and the venue changes so much. You're in the United States one minute, then you're in China, the South China Sea, the next couple pages, and then you're shifting back, and now you're in Russia, now you're on the moon, things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's I think that really dictated. If it's getting too much, the back and forth stuff I think is important. So I want to keep all that stuff together. But now if the next scene dictates it's mostly going to be in Washington, I think that's a good place to make that break. That write the next several scenes in the United States, partly in Washington, partly in Battle Mountain or someplace like that. Then that's staying in the U.S. So I think that's a good place to start the next chapter. But if you're doing a lot of back and forths and the moon here, there, down here, then I think all that back and forth stuff have to stay together, or else you really lose there's a real risk of losing the reader after that. So all the back and forth I think is good, and it's engaging and it's exciting to put in there, but you definitely don't want to lose the reader. So I leave it in there. That's a good chapter, and a good break is when you're not doing that back and forth stuff, but you're sticking in one locale. I think that's a good place to start the next chapter.
Yeah, makes sense. For me, flying in a private aircraft, I grew up with a family of private pilots, and when I'm up and flying in a small aircraft, I kind of feel like I'm disconnected from everything back on firm ground, like I'm separated myself. And I don't know if you feel that same moment, but do you recall any plot ideas or main characters you've created springing from those moments of kind of serenity floating amongst the clouds?
No, flying a private plane for me really isn't that I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and all that. It's very much the way I did it in the Air Force. It's very, very technical. I do the flight planning. You plan the flight and fly the plan. That's a biggie for me. I'm a systems guy, where I let the gadgets and I let the computers fly the airplane. I manage all that stuff, and I talk with air traffic control, and I do all the stuff. The airplane doesn't land itself or take off itself, so I have to do that. But for the most of the flying it's very systems orientated. It's very automated, and that's just the way I do it. But I'm always thinking about the book, and I think to avoid getting into a block, I think if you find yourself sitting at the desk and nothing's happening, you're not typing anything, the ideas aren't coming, you've got to get away from the book. You've got to get away from the computer. You got to get up. When my son was young, I play with him or pick him up from school and just do something else. But get away from the computer. Flying is a great way to do it. You got to stay efficient. You got to do a certain amount of instrument approaches, and you have to do holding, and you have to intercept courses, and certain things you have to do at least three takeoffs and landings every 3 months. That's the absolute minimum. But you got to do all that stuff, and it's required to do it. So flying is a good way to get away from the office and get away from the computer. But what I found is that the story never really leaves your brain. You're always kind of about it, and and I find that doing something else. I'm a soccer referee, and I do that quite a bit during the summer. That's a good way to get out. You're moving around. Definitely different from flying, but the story never leaves your brain. When you come back home, you can sit down again, and all of a sudden the story starts to flow. Things start to move. You broke the block. Mm-hmm. And things just start working again. And I think that's really important for authors to do. You just got to get away. Don't paint yourself. Don't worry about painting yourself into a corner. Do something other than sit at the computer and start to say, "Oh, I've lost it. I'm never going to be a writer again. It's gone. I can't do it." You got to get up, get away, grab the wife, grab your son, go out, take a trip, go to the Bay Area, get a different scenery, because I guarantee that the idea is still in your head. And that's a good opportunity also when you're in the hotel room in San Francisco, and Diane asks, "Well, how's the story going?" That's a great opportunity to say, "Well, I'm kind of having trouble. I think I painted myself in a corner." And she's, "Okay, tell me about it." She'll find a glass of Grand Marnier and sit down and say, "Okay, let's talk about it. How'd you paint yourself in the corner?" And I found that talking about it, you have to step back several chapters, and you have to explain the story and what led up to that scene where nothing's happening in there. And usually something is said, or actually just talking about the story up to that point really seems to unblock things. And Diane's great about thinking about ideas or alternates about about what I can do with the story. So,
Nice.
but you have to get away from the computer,
Yeah.
away from the office, and do anything to unblock your head. Because if you sit there and feel sorry for yourself and start muttering about, oh God, I wanted to do 6 pages today. I've only done 2. Oh my God. So I'm going to be back. I'm going to owe 12 pages tomorrow. And you can't do that because
Yeah.
Oh.
yourself nuts.
Very
so
common,
you
though.
got to get away. You got to get away from the office, but the story will never leave you.
Mm.
So Dale, speaking of the story, in Eagle Station, we talked about it before, and what I love is you write about the not so distant future, but it's one I thought by 2020, like I thought as a child, if I was looking forward to 2020, one I thought we would be at by now, like what you wrote. Considering the last man to walk on the moon was 1972, which was like 48 years ago. Did you feel the same as you you're right in the future a little bit, but did you feel the same, like we should already be doing this stuff?
Absolutely. The research doing the single stage to orbit space planes. The first idea that I had for that was I read an Air Force Institute of Technology paper that was written back in the 60s about a jet the size of an F-16 fighter, but that can take off from a regular runway but blast itself into orbit. And this was back in the 60s. I thought certainly by the 80s or the 90s we'll have one of these things,
Right,
flying, and it'll be everywhere. And it just didn't happen. I think the Challenger accident had a lot to do with that. That really set the space program back.
like 5 years.
Politicians were kind of reluctant to invest too much more money. And then the retirement of the space shuttle program, I think also that was a big detriment. It was easier, I think, on the voters to let the Russians take us up to the International Space Station rather than building another space shuttle program that could be a failure. So
Yeah, that was short-sighted.
a lot of factors in there that really set the space program back, and I think that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We became much more risk averse because during the 60s, we had our share of disasters. I mean, Gus Grissom, among others, but that was not looked at as a program stopper. It was something that we had to figure out and overcome.
Right.
And our way of thinking seemed to change.
Right.
Yeah, and those who passed away, they wouldn't want us to stop. They would want us to carry on the mission. And
absolutely. But I think that the risk averse thing really set in. I think the Challenger accident really set Americans back on their heels.
Agreed.
That was horrible, and it really put the space shuttle program on hold for a good 2 years or so.
Yep.
And then we finally got back into it. But I think by then people started to realize. I mean, you go out to the Kennedy Space Center and you see the space shuttle out there, or you go to a UCLA and you see the Space Exploration Museum down there, and you realize, boy, these things look really old and really beat up, so maybe they're thinking that maybe it's a good thing that we canceled the space shuttle before we had any more accidents after that, but I think it's a great thing now that private industry has stepped up and that they're building spacecraft now.
Yeah, it's huge.
Just the federal government. I think that's great.
Yeah, they'll push the technology along. Hey, I watched the Air Force Academy graduation there in April with my 2 sons. And boy, watching those cadets stand up for the first time to join the Space Force as second lieutenants, it was the very first graduating class in their silver sashes. And, it was a kind of an eerie feeling of like this pride of watching a brand new, a group and branch in our military coming up. Do you see a future where we actually conduct military operations against foreign governments in the battle space, up in space? Or do you think we're going to hold enough technological advantage for the most part where that will kind of keep us from those sorts of engagements for the foreseeable future?
We've had the technology for since the 50s, really from from launching weapons from space. So I mean, there's an outer space treaty where they don't want weapons in the Earth orbit. But we've actually had that technology for many years, and the Russians have had it too. The fractional orbital bombardment system was one of them, where they had plans to launch weapons from space. So I think eventually that's gonna be happening. I mean, right now it's going to start with maybe directed energy weapons, or maybe just data, maybe
Right.
just, disrupting satellites and things like that from orbit. But I think eventually that's where it is. It's the old saying, it's the high ground.
Yeah.
Every nation captures the high ground. That's a huge advantage for them. So I think we're going to have to move in that direction. I think it's going to move very rapidly. Also, when it does, the first country, unfortunately, might be China, but the first country to actually have a military space station built not for research and scientific experiments, but actually have a crew up there with weapons that do attacks on Earth. That could happen very soon. And I think once that does happen, that technology will advance really quickly. I think all the plans that we've had for decades and decades will be dusted off, and we'll start doing that stuff again.
Out of necessity, completely.
Yeah, I never thought about that. If you hold the space, you're gonna be controlling the airspace above the ground in our own atmosphere. Because if you can control the satellite technology and the communications with that, you can
absolutely. And I get into that with Eagle Station too, and with the Moscow offensive also. But Eagle Station, I really explore that. Now I do a lot of stuff with the moon and control of a moon base, but also taking command of satellites from that are in Earth orbit. That's also very possible to do, and I think the Russians have that capability. China is rapidly getting that capability. So, I think that's going to happen, definitely.
Whoever controls space wins.
Yep,
that's right.
And Dale, that is the end of our traditional side of this interview, and we're gonna slide right into what we call the lightning round. The three of us are going to ask you some off the wall questions, and we hope you give us some off the wall answers.
All right.
All right. I'm going to start first. So we were talking about space being the next battlefield, if it's not already, and getting back to the moon is going to be paramount. The U.S. has a timetable that we're going to be back to the moon at some point soon, hopefully. But so do the Russians and the Chinese. Who gets there first? Us, the Russians, or the Chinese?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be either Russia or China. I don't think we really have a commitment yet to the moon. We're, for some reason, we're looking at Mars. I think that's a huge mistake also, but I don't think it's going to be the United States. Like I said, there's some huge technological leap similar to what happens in Eagle Station, where suddenly the United States government realizes how far behind we are and scrambles to catch up after that.
Yeah.
I hope it's us. I think if we let the Chinese or Russians get there, it's just a bad thing for us.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be bad. And I think we have to develop the mindset where that space really should belong to the United States. I mean, just like the oceans really belong to the United States. We patrol every ocean out there. We've got aircraft carriers that guarantee navigation. We can't allow anybody to restrict navigation anywhere in the world, so we don't. We sail aircraft carriers and fly aircraft, and we have patrols and things. So we're already doing it in the oceans. We need to do the very same thing in space.
My next question, switch it up a little bit. Elon Musk, SpaceX, the CEO, visionary genius or crazy?
He's absolute genius. He doesn't. I don't think he's ever rejected an idea, or anybody would, especially him, but anybody would ever tell him that's a stupid idea, because he has a habit. Of course, he has the resources to do it also, but but he has, the things he's developing and the ideas he has are so revolutionary that I think that's why the state of the art is advancing, generation in less than a year. Every 9 to 12 months, I think the state of the art is advancing that fast because of guys like Musk and people like that.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I watched his the boosters come down. The two of them come down at the exact same time and land.
Amazing.
It blew my mind. I thought I was watching like a video game or a movie, but it was real
boat
life.
bobbing out in the ocean.
Amazing technology, and and that was his brainchild.
Yeah.
Why did we let these things splash down in the ocean? Why can't we just land them back on the launch pad?
Right.
It's like, you're crazy.
You can't do that. Boy, don't tell Elon Musk you can't do that.
I love watching those things come down. All right. So my next question, the SR-72, Lockheed Martin's proposed successor to the SR-71 Blackbird, it's scheduled to be ready to fly by 2025. You think it will?
Yes, I do.
Ooh.
Absolutely. I think that's state of the art. Now, it's not really 2020 technology. It's really 2000 technology. But I think it's been there for a long time, waiting to go. And there's a very good possibility that thing could be flying now. Maybe not. Maybe not going hypersonic, but I think it's could be flying right now, or at least getting ready to roll out.
That'd be so cool.
Oh,
It's
so
very
cool.
doable.
Yeah.
I go and see the at Chantilly, Virginia. Here, I go to the Air and Space Museum, and I see the SR-71 just sitting there. Man, that thing is so cool looking, to know that there's going to be something right on its tail coming out. It's going to be even better.
And that thing was built and designed using slide rulers. It was
That's
just
crazy.
I mean, no computers back then. It was
Insane.
The most advanced computer was the size of a house, and it has less computing power than an Apple Watch. So it's just amazing technology. Johnson was Skunk Works was just again way ahead of their time, and Musk is definitely one of those guys where he's got the resources and the brain power to just come up with these ideas. Just
very cool.
Incredible. I think what we're going to see in the next 10 years, 20 years is just going to blow people away. And I try to write about that stuff. That's that I want to live.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it so many times in the past where I've written about some new technology that I've read about or somebody's mentioned, and I said, well, that's not going to be here for another 5 or 10 years. But I've been writing books long enough where that technology was just coming off the drawing boards back then, and now we're using it. And people pick up my books and say, well, he's been writing about the U.S. Space Force for 5 years now.
It's why we like to read Dale Brown books.
That's why we don't.
You do the research, you find out about this stuff, and I can't be afraid to write about it. Now I'm getting too far ahead of my publishers, where he's saying, yeah, maybe I don't do the science fiction now. But
no, it's science fact.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I like doing research about. That's what I'm going to keep on doing.
Yeah. All right, I'm up. Question number 1. Which Air Force base in the world has the best pilot accommodations?
Best pilot accommodations. Base housing has really changed a lot.
Yeah, I bet.
Since I was in. I've never lived on base, by the way. I've always lived off base.
Oh.
Because I was married while I was in college, so I was a married couple.
Okay.
So we had the option of either you're staying on base or living close by, because we're both in the Air Force. I was an alert crew, so I had to be fairly responsive.
Right.
So we lived close to the base, but we always lived off base.
Okay.
So I wasn't really that familiar with the on-base housing. Now, bachelor officer quarters, I wasn't familiar with at all, unless I was TDY someplace and you'd stay in a BOQ.
Yeah.
And, he shared a bathroom and, it was basically a studio apartment. And it was horrible. No desire ever to live on base. And glad I never did.
Discarded that one. All right. Question number 2. If money was no object, what private available aircraft would you love to own and why?
That's a good question. I'm doing the kind of flying that I like doing. The airplane I fly that I own is a pressurized Skymaster. It's
Nice.
slowest. The Skymaster is the slowest twin engine plane that Cessna has ever built. It's only a 4-seater. It's got a lot of baggage room, but it's only 4 seats.
Wow.
It's kind of small. It's kind of cramped. That's the kind of flying I do. I can fly for, probably 800 miles with it. And, that's about 3 hours of flying. It's definitely not a speed burner. I've owned the rocket ships before, but that's not the kind of flying I do. I used to fly coast to coast. I just don't do that anymore. And so I don't really have a need for a jet or, some multi-million-dollar airplane. It's a comfortable, slow, pressurized airplane, 2 engines.
Sure.
Very capable. It's, fully de-iced. It's got all the gadgets, all the bells and whistles on it. It's very high tech, which I really like. It's fine with me. I'd love to fly a jet. I'd love to fly a Cirrus jet, something like that. But I don't really want or need to spend millions of dollars on an airplane. I do. I fly for the Civil Air Patrol. We fly little 182s,
Yeah.
6s. It's fine with me. We do a lot of great missions with Civil Air Patrol.
Yeah.
We doing the PPE deliveries now. We do search and
Oh
rescue.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
We do a lot of aerial photography. That's my speed right now. Back 20 years ago, I had a Aerostar airplane, the fastest piston-powered plane in the world.
Wow.
That was a rocket ship. It was and I had a great time. Flew it from coast to coast all the time, and it was made for that. Made to go far and fast. And that was great back 20 years ago. Now
you got the SUV of the sky.
Yeah.
All right. My last question. And you might have already kind of alluded to this earlier. If NASA offered you and medically cleared you, would you go to Mars?
Absolutely.
There we go.
I'd go to the moon. I'd go to International Space Station.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely do that. I would do it in a heartbeat. And I think I'm relatively healthy now, so I need to get off my butt a little bit more, but no, I would love to do it, and I would do it in a heartbeat.
Explore to the very end.
Yeah, I love it.
I realize 9 months out, and you stay there 9 months back, but what an opportunity, what an adventure that would be to do that.
Have your name on that.
Now, don't ask my wife that same question because she'd wring my neck. But
She said, absolutely, you're going.
Well, you're in better shape than most. I know a lot of people whose wives would send them tomorrow. So.
I don't think
they got
my
a
wife
little
would be
bit
happy if I agreed to do that.
Yeah, probably.
All right, so I'm up now. Whose career experiences would you rather have had? Chuck Yeager's or Neil Armstrong's?
Oh, great question.
Tough.
I think Chuck Yeager. He would. He had a brilliant career before he got into flying spacecraft. He was, he was a war hero.
Yes.
He'd been there and done that already. And then why? He was test pilot and had a fabulous career. But why in the world leave that? So I think the things that Yeager did, the courage the guy had. He probably wasn't the brainy science engineers they use right now in test pilot school, but boy oh boy, the courage he had to have to climb into that X-1.
Go the sound barrier.
His arm and wasn't really medically able to fly it. He still did it, and it was just the courage he had, and the gumption he had was just incredible.
When I read his book, I had the thought if he were a fictional character, somebody would say, "Oh, come on, that's too much."
Yeah,
It's
yeah, all that.
almost like the
Yeah.
Forrest Gump of pilots, where he did so much, it's hard to believe that. All right, my second question: what is the most interesting or unique experience you've had as part of the Civil Air Patrol?
Oh boy, I think the stuff we're doing now is kind of neat. But I think doing a search and rescue and actually being part of an actual search. We do a lot of exercises, and we do one just about every month. But actually getting the call to go on an actual search, and you go through the whole routine. The incident commander tells you what he wants. We have great technology now where they can use cell phone forensics to really pinpoint location. We had the last actual search I was on. We had a guy who had driven out into the desert in his Escalade. I was the off-roading in an Escalade, but he was out there in the middle of nowhere. Got started walking. He's in the middle, probably 70 miles from the nearest anything. And he started walking because I think he saw there's a solar power station with huge mirrors on it that you can see for miles and miles. And I think he saw that, and I think he was heading in that direction. That was the speculation. But at the time, he was trying to dial 911 on his phone, and he wasn't getting through to 911. But cell towers could triangulate on his position.
Wow.
We had a pretty fair idea about where he was. We were assigned 4 areas to search. So we flew out there. We were able to fly 3 of those areas before we had to turn around because of fuel. They found the guy the next day in the 4th area that we didn't. But the cool thing was that we could eliminate those 3 areas, and they concentrated their search on the 4th area.
That's where they were going to find him.
Very cool.
And thankfully, he was still alive. I got my certificate right up there, find and save.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. But the whole thing worked. The cell phone forensics was part of it, where they don't do any flying. They just triangulate signals from the phone company. But the flying out there, the search patterns that we do, thinking that we would see horses out there, and we think that maybe the horses were being spooked by somebody walking around there. So that's why the horses were running away. So it really made us concentrate the search on the area where those horses were running from. So we would use logic like that to try to do it. And it was really exciting. It was a long day of flying, long day of mission planning and meetings and all this stuff. But we were actually successful in finding the guy. And although my crew didn't actually find him, but we were, like I said, we were able to
Process of elimination.
3 of those 4 areas.
Yeah.
So the next search that went up the next day went to that one area, and
Right.
Fantastic.
It was great.
Well, so my final question is a little bit on the silly side. Actually, it's a lot on the silly side. Was President Barbeau inspired at all by my childhood crush, Adrienne Barbeau?
Yes, it was. Absolutely, it was. Now, all of my characters are kind of a mix of people that I love and people that I hate. But yeah, Adrienne.
That's awesome. One of my favorites from.
Definitely was.
I'm not sure what to put that 2 together.
As soon as I saw the name, I thought,
I've done a lot of stuff like that. There was one book, and I can't remember which one it was, but the names of the characters in the books were all the women from the Weather Channel.
oh,
I'm allowed to do that. It's my book.
Yeah, right.
You do whatever you want.
Dude,
I've
Dale.
gotten in trouble. I can't remember which book it was, but I had characters, the president and the first lady in the White House, that were modeled after Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I learned an awful lesson about that. If you have a message, especially a political one, don't stick it in your novel, because like the things about what happened with Patrick, people recognize that, and people are offended and they're mad and pissed off about it. Do not put that kind of stuff in your books. If you don't like Bill Clinton, kind of make fun of him and eating fried chicken in the White House and all this other stuff, don't put it in your novel. You Facebook or something like that, but don't put it in your novel.
Learned.
Folks, there's a lesson there for you, folks.
Yep.
Listen to Mr. Brown.
Hey, Dale, it has been awesome to have you on our show talking about Eagle Station. Comes out May 26th. People go pick this book up, buy it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
If you love Dale Brown, which we do, you're going to love this book.
Oh, it's fantastic.
We want to raise a glass to you, sir. As cheers for coming on the show. You've been a fantastic guest.
Oh, what are we drinking here?
Whatever's in your
whatever you got. We're going to cheer you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Good show.
Here we go. This is the outro for Dale Brown. And Christopher is not hammered for once.
I feel hammered.
Pressure is on.
Still
In 3, 2, again.
Sean, what are you doing? I got to cover you up, too. Cut it out. Can I watch it? Because I don't even know what happened. I don't remember any of it.
You heard it here.
Remember the outro. Hey, boys, we had a fantastic guest, an awesome guest, the author of Eagle Station, Dale Brown. He writes some of the best military thriller techno adventures around. He's been writing since 87. Book comes out May 26th. I want everybody to go out and get this book. I loved it. Mike loved it. Sean loved it. You'll love it.
Do it.
Do it. We're going to raise a glass to Mr. Dale Brown.
We shall. Look at that. Space
Thank you,
Force.
sir. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Good show, boys.